Hello friends, welcome to Islington Listens, wisdom from a community of faith that doesn't think the same, vote the same, or love the same, but we are trying our best to follow in the way of Jesus with compassion and hope. The Bishop of Washington, Mariann Edgar Budde's book, How We Learn to Be Brave, has been nourishment for us in our learning. We're on week 2 of an 8-week journey. She preached at the inaugural prayer service this past January with President Trump and Vice President Vance sitting right in the front row. Her have mercy words went viral and impacted people all over the world. And for her courage, this morning we are grateful. Last week, we looked at deciding to go, to leave one place of being ourselves and move toward another. It's a choice, a response, an act of discernment. Any follower of Jesus has a personal story of when they have decided to go. In the Gospel of Luke, Peter reminds Jesus of the time when Jesus was walking along the shore and asking the disciples to choose to follow him. In Luke, it says, "Then Peter said, 'Look, Jesus, we have left our homes and followed you.' And Jesus responds, 'Truly, I tell you, there's no one who left house or partner or brothers or parents or children for the sake of the kingdom of God who will not get back very much more in this age and the age to come.'" Deciding to go, trusting a promise, taking a leap of faith, a step forward in hope, leaving some things behind. This week, deciding to stay. It's also a choice. It's also a response. It's also an act of discernment. Now, there's a warning here because in our culture of church and in our interpretation of Scripture, there has often been a clear preference for staying in ways that kept people in line with how they thought the church people should act. And I'm sure we all have a story of bumping up against that. There is a warning this morning in my inviting you to think about deciding to stay, because I am not speaking in support of staying when staying is abusive or harmful, for that is not the will of our God. Self-sacrifice is not always the path of love. Pursuing our heart's desire can be the most life-affirming choice we can make, even when it takes us from other commitments. And so I invite you again to look around, just with gracious eyes, and notice. For you are in a room of people who have at different times in their lives decided to stay or decided to go. Yeah, literally I want you to do it, because it's really easy to be like, nobody's like me, I don't understand, no one understands me. You would not believe the depth of the story of discernment within this space, and that doesn't even take in all those online. The choir gets to continue to look around, so they'll notice. You are surrounded by people who have decided to go and ended up here. Some of them got off the wrong bus and stayed a little longer. Others of you have only know one route to this place, and it has been for your whole life long. Some have kept going, moved away, and stayed and connected online. Some in this very moment are looking around thinking, am I deciding to stay here or should I go? Ann Taylor's novel, Saint Maybe, in that novel, the church name is the Church of the Second Chance. I love that. It reminds us that even when we choose to stay or go, there's also room to change our mind or for God to call us a different way. In that book, a person comes to the minister and feels stuck. He says, I feel like I'm wasting my life. I wonder if you've had a moment like that along your journey. And the minister responds, this is your life. Lean into it. Perhaps what you face is a gift, the theme you've been given to work with at this time. For this is the only life you have. Last week, I invited people to sketch out a timeline of their life from birth until now, hoping there's more to come following today. But along that way, you have had moments of discernment where you have decided to go or decided to stay. Some of those choices have been your own, others have been connected to family and situations along the journey. Deciding to go is not the opposite of deciding to stay. In fact, deciding to go is not the adventure, and deciding to stay is not wasting our lives. There are always trade-offs in every decision. And in spiritual language, we call that sacrifice. There is a gift and a cost to going and to stability, because we cannot have it all. No matter who tries to sell you that, no matter what next glossy idea, we know as people of faith that we cannot have it all. And when you do that timeline, sometimes people focus only on the going, but in between, the days spent in place far outnumber those when we're called to go. In fact, it is these days that prepare us for or meet us after we decide to go. Makes me think of my own journey. Deciding to stay true to my ministry call and ending a relationship that had been long going, age 27. Deciding to finish my studies at Emmanuel College when someone I loved asked me to go with them to move to another country, age 29. Deciding to stay in Naramata, BC to cover a colleague's sabbatical, which would possibly delay my ordination and the plan I had for my own life, age 31. Deciding to stay in long-time relationship and marry my best friend, age 32. Deciding to stay in Innerkip Eastwood when the former lead minister at Islington United prayerfully invited me and my husband to consider applying to serve in ministry here, age 39. Deciding to stay with my family and move with my husband Adam and my daughter Nora in his new call to ministry at Islington and Bloor, the United Church General Council office here in Etobicoke, age 41. Deciding to stay in ministry here at IUC, returning to our 9-year relationship after 6 months of restorative care leave, age 49. Deciding to stay is a choice to go deeper into a commitment we've made, into the life that we already have. In choosing to stay, we acknowledge there's more at stake than only what we feel or what we want. What I want, although perhaps good and admirable, may not be possible or worth the cost. We learn there is more than one way to be brave, and some of the most courageous decisions we make are the ones that no one ever sees. One of my favorite theologians, Frederick Buechner, wrote, "Listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery that it is, and in the boredom and the pain of it no less than in the excitement or the gladness. Touch, taste, and smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it. Because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace." It's easy, isn't it, to hold a beautiful baby and smell how good they are, and to think about how beautiful life is until the baby throws up all over you or cries all night long, and then people are ready to pass the baby off and be grateful they don't have to stay. In the midst of the everyday, God meets us with grace. And faithfulness, it isn't always about taking big leaps, but also walking with small steps. And it's possible to make a lasting difference in our world by tending to just one small corner of it. Because, in fact, where you are may be exactly where God needs you to be. And you can think of that in terms of your life of school and study. You can think of it in terms of planting a garden and that garden needing you to keep it alive for a while. You can think of it in terms of partnership, lifelong, of parenting, of vocation or long-time commitment to job, to work, You can think of it to caregiving at any age. All of these things can sound romantic in the beginning, when it's a seed catalog filled with the pictures of possibility, or when it's a newness of falling in love. But we all know there is a moment when the honeymoon is over and the way gets tough. Do we stay or do we go? And in the midst of that, God calls out to us, and we can be caught in comparison traps. Grass is greener if I go. Someone close to me has had the exact same journey, and they decided to stay or go. There can be a sacrificial component in the decision to stay. There's grief in the midst of the road not taken or the weight of a burden that we choose not to lay down. And staying can also be a loving gift to ourselves and others. For in choosing stability in one area of our life, we give those who depend on us an opportunity to thrive and grow. And we test our ability to stay by noticing resentment, building, or calming. We can choose to stay with the best of intentions and continue to draw on the strength and support of community and of God. But when we're doing it to the point that we're losing ourselves or resentment is so loud, then we need to regroup. At best, the decision to stay is a daily choice to remain wholeheartedly in your own life and commitments, resisting the temptation to drift, or passively disengage. I think they call it quietly quitting now at work, or stoically soldiering on. The times of crisis come after seasons of doubt and disillusion or boredom, when we find ourselves wishing for any other life but ours. And we will find ourselves at crossroads, taking courage to choose either to leave or to stay, with a deeper understanding of what staying demands or makes possible. And I'm grateful for Bishop Mariann's candor and frankness about her own marriage, her own journey in learning and parenting. And she tells honestly about the moments of deciding to stay. Her husband's name is Paul, but she would talk about both of them praying separately and together and not hearing the word or invitation to go. And so in not hearing to go, the invitation is to stay a little longer. When I marry couples in this space, I say the best thing about getting married is that once the day's over, somehow your parents think they're kind of done, and they open up to talking to you about things they might not have before. And I invite them to ask them the questions of, how did you stay when it got hard? How did you decide to go when it felt broken? To move into adult learnings about what it takes to tend relationship together. Because anybody, and I know even this week, every time I turn around, someone's been married 60 years, 55. I think Murray and Pat, is it 60? Are we coming up? Like the Hunter, no, they're like, we're way past it. Yeah, I know. Pat's like, come on, I'm counting every single day. But anyone who has had the practice of staying will have lessons about what it took, and we don't have any sense that it is easy along the way. So, the part of the story that I don't think I've ever really said out loud, except Adam knows, is when Adam got called to work here, the last thing I wanted to do was move to the city, which was exactly what I told Uncle Mark when he called me to pray about it. I said, I don't really need to do that. God needs me here in the place where I know, in the country where there's not much traffic and where I know how to do what I have been called to do. Little did I know. In the course of a well-lived life, we need sufficient groundedness to develop relationships, to wrestle with the questions, to not just have your first answer be the immediate, and to learn how to stay when you're most surprised by the place where God has planted you. And in choosing to be near and with family, there's a choice to stay in being with someone who has witnessed to your life. I am grateful for that hindsight. And I am grateful to keep in mind that the neighborhood we live in may not be the neighborhood we want, but it may be the neighborhood that will really make human beings out of us. And each day, as this neighborhood around us continues to grow and change, I know that God has something for us by staying here in this space and in this neighborhood and learning to know each other more. And we can learn from the courage of others. Eleanor Roosevelt was kind of unfamiliar to me in the last little while, but I have been reading about her and learning about her, imagining her as this shy, quiet woman marrying Franklin, finding out he wasn't the most faithful in his marriage to her. And in their discerning to stay together, she received the power to redefine what it meant to be his wife, what it meant to live out for her the call to service in a world, because she longed for goodness in the world. And they renegotiated and navigated along their marriage way around how she could offer herself, not just his life, to the ideals of justice and peace and human rights. It was Eleanor who wrote the quote, or who defined courage by saying, "Courage is doing what you think you cannot do." And last week when I talked about Howard Thurman and his call to move from the first interracial church in America to teaching at a predominantly white seminary, well, if you go all the way back to the beginning of that church, it was Eleanor who signed the commitment card, one of the first ones to start that church in San Francisco with Howard. And so we think of those who have gone before, not just the stories that books have been written about, but people that are among us and within this congregation and the wider United Church. We think of my Black minister colleagues who stay in a church that's learning to find its way when racism and patriarchy and colonial action is still present. We pay attention to how for people who it's harder to stay, they need louder signs from God, not just quiet nudges, but reminders that the work they're doing, although slow and difficult, can be the right work at the right time, and that God will strengthen them, and that they need us to come alongside and to listen differently to that call. Our prayers are with people amongst us who are on the fertility journey, who have a deep knowing that God is calling them to have family, but in the midst of the trying and the waiting, they stay in the journey and we walk alongside them. Bishop Budde writes, "There is nothing passive or inconsequential in choosing to stay. It is always a wrestle with profound questions of identity and relationship, purpose of our lives, and sacrificial nature of love. We are listening for those curiosities when we are wondering if people are stuck or if they're staying. Because sometimes the most loving and courageous decision is to stay where you are." Now, choosing to stay is rarely recognized as the heroic journey it can be, and few may see the depth of crisis we experience when our lives hang in the balance between. It is by and large an inner struggle. So often it is a late at night, all alone feeling struggle when you're wrestling with God. But the invitation is to tune into what truly matters, to be honest with yourself. And when a baby's crying in the middle of the night, you can't help but know what truly matters because it becomes immediate in that moment. The honesty may be for the best. For what we need most of the time that can be missing is the quiet and the space to reflect, to discern and listen to the inner compass that God already wired us with. Even in situations when we desperately want to leave, we may be well astonished to realize that staying is our own choice, that we're not trapped, and we can become agents of our own destiny. Because deciding to stay doesn't mean staying the same. Every choice leads to a change. even those disciples, when they first decided to go, they had an idea of what it might be like. They thought they knew who Jesus was, but as he became more and more controversial, well, crowds started abandoning him. Disciples were deserting him. When Jesus spoke about the bread of life, many said, "That's hard. Who can accept it?" And they left. And we find the disciples in that moment because Jesus calls them together and says, "Many people are leaving." He gathered them, and it says in the Gospel of John, because of this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer went about with Jesus. So Jesus asked the 12, "Do you also wish to go away?" And Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom can we go? You have the word of life." Just want you to say that over in your mind. When we are discerning, the question that Simon Peter gave us is, "Lord, to whom can we go?" Choosing to stay is trust, not ignoring questions, but believing in Jesus even when the path is unclear. It resists easy answers or greener pastures, and it anchors us in hope, love, and God's promise. Peter's response gives us the heart of faithfulness. Who else would we go to, Lord, when you have the word of life? We have tried other ways, and you keep calling us back to you. To stay with Jesus when the teaching is hard is to declare with our lives, "I may not understand everything, but I know where life is found, and I will not leave." It's remembering the ancient faith that's been passed on to us that the psalmist writes about. "Make a joyful noise to the Lord, for God is good. God's steadfast love endures forever." To stay in God's presence is to choose joy, gratitude, and faithfulness. Staying present does not mean ignoring the dismay in the world. Injustice, suffering, and loss are real. But staying grounded in God, we can see them clearly without letting them overwhelm our hearts. What I have learned in times of choosing to stay is we need to stay grounded. And you know that when you're afraid, the gut reaction is to run away, right? When we're afraid, we're kind of wired to run. But the invitation to stay before you decide or go, to take that moment to decide. Now, of course, if there was a wolf running down the aisle, there's time to run. I mean in our regular decision-making in our lives. And so people often ask me, again, because they forget, why do I preach with my shoes off? Because it reminds me to stay grounded. Because wherever I am, I deeply know that it is holy ground, not just in this beautiful sanctuary, but particularly in this place, to stay grounded in the knowing that God's love is with us, it has been with us, and it will continue to guide us. So I invite you to find your posture of knowing, the posture that helps you to listen. Some people have it as the threshold between doorways when they go from work to home or from one thing to another. But I invite you to this week, pay attention to the thing that will help you to stay grounded and listening. For we have been given a joy and a thanksgiving that anchors us in God's enduring love. Choosing to stay in that presence is not denial, but resilience, and a declaration that God's love holds us steady, and together we can face anything. Thanks for listening, friends. For other ways to connect, go to islingtonunited.org. May God's wisdom and love keep finding you.